You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 193, How to Deal with Being Ghosted. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, beautiful brave hearts. How are you doing today? I wanted to come on and talk about ghosting. Some of you ask me how about this because your breakup happened through the form of ghosting, and it's less common to happen in long-term relationships. However, it absolutely does happen. I've seen it multiple times. And I see it in a lot of ways, like I guess people are calling them situationships. However, I still think situationships are real relationships, and calling them situationships it's sometimes helpful, but most often I find it not useful. And then, of course, we also see ghosting happening in dating. So if it's happening in all of those different scenarios, let's chat about it. And before we get started, I really wanted to just take a moment and remind you, the 5-day How to Get Over Your Ex training is starting today, Monday, June 19th. We will be accomplishing 5 months of healing in 5 days. So if you're struggling in your breakup and you want to get over your ex and build that bigger and better life, please come join us. It is short, powerful, impactful, and extremely reasonably priced. It's only $17, and you have me as your coach for 5 days. Absolutely unreal. The link is going to be in my show notes, and I hope to see you inside. All right, what is ghosting? According to the Googles, ghosting is the practice of ending a personal relationship with someone by suddenly and without explanation withdrawing from all communication. So you're talking with someone and then they just stop talking to you, whether that's through text, maybe it's in-person meetings, over the phone, just no longer can get a hold of them. And I actually believe that there are two forms because I've seen both. One is the sudden, meaning you go from chatting every day to all of a sudden you don't hear from them. It's like a sudden and abrupt ending. And that's kind of scary, right? For those of us who care about other human beings, it's like, are you okay? I'm actually kind of concerned for your well-being. Are you alive? The second is a gradual. So this can be also very painful. And this is where, my natural default is to get clingy and graspy. You can notice someone is slowly backing away and you can normally feel it and you want to ignore that intuitive side of you, or maybe say it's my anxious attachment style, but really deep down you can tell things are shifting. It goes from talking every day to missing a couple of messages, and you find your text thread looking very uneven. You all know what I'm talking about, right? You see a lot of your messages that don't have responses from them, and you find yourself saying like, hello, are you there? And lastly, I want to say that ghosting in my eyes, from my point of view, is an action. It is a behavior. And this is important as we move into the question of why does ghosting happen? Why does someone ghost you? Right? And I want to start off with the basics. Thoughts create how we feel. Those optional sentences that we think to ourselves, consciously or unconsciously, create how we feel. They create the emotional experiences we have in our life. And those emotions fuel our behavior and the way we show up in the world. So if ghosting is a behavior, it is an action that is fueled by our feelings. And those feelings are created by thought patterns that someone is choosing or unintentionally living by. Now, this is really important because we have to recognize that not everyone chooses to ghost you. Not every single human being in the world chooses thought patterns or unintentionally live through those thought patterns that create a feeling that fuels ghosting, okay? So it's not a you thing, but before we dive into that, I want to look at what are some thought patterns that cause people to ghost? What are some feelings that fuel action of ghosting? And while we look at that, I want you to think about how you've ghosted in the past. You for sure, at some point in your life, have ghosted someone. I promise you. Whether that's a friend, a job, a salesperson, a spam call, you have ghosted someone at some point in your life, and I want you to think about why you did that. What were your thoughts? What were your feelings that fueled that kind of behavior? And don't do it from a shaming place. It's neither good or bad or right or wrong. It's just something to look at, which will help you understand why maybe someone ghosted you and how it really doesn't have any direct reflection on you, and more so is a direct reflection of them and their own capacity and insecurities in their life. I don't know why this visualization that comes to me in this episode, but what I see is the perfume lady or man at the department store, and you're walking in and you almost dismiss that person or you avoid them, and it's not because of them and who they are at their core, but it has to do with your comfort level at saying no, or your ability to appreciate what they have while also saying, I'm not interested. Okay? So let's dive in. Here are some thought patterns and feelings that I've seen create behavior or action of ghosting. Thought patterns that created ghosting are, this isn't what I want. And this can show up in the form of he or she is fill in the blank, right? She's a batshit crazy. She's psycho. He's clingy. He's too much. He's needy. AKA, that's not what I want. If you really look at that thought, they're blaming it on another person. They have thoughts about you. But why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because it's not what they want to deal with. It's not what they want. Does that mean you are batshit crazy? Does that mean you are psycho, clingy, needy, or too much? Absolutely not. That is just a thought someone else is choosing about you. It doesn't mean you have to subscribe to that. Other thought patterns are, I'm not ready for this. I don't want anything serious. This is awkward. I don't know how to handle this. I don't want to do this anymore, but I feel like I'm stuck. I saw like a meme or something on Instagram where someone from Texas got married to someone from Australia. And as soon as the visa came through, he ghosted her. And they were married and it looked like they had a kid. And I could so see that coming from the place of like, I don't want to be in this anymore, but I want to stay in Australia and I feel stuck, right? And that means they felt stuck or cornered. Again, this doesn't make the behavior right or wrong or anything. It doesn't mean we have to like condone that behavior, but we can at least see from a neutral place. If we pull back, it's like, it's not about the person he ghosted. It's about his thoughts and his capacity for confrontation and feeling stuck or cornered. Another thought pattern is, I should have already proposed, but I don't know if I'm ready, right? And then the other person's not taking no for an answer. And so then they start ghosting because they feel cornered or stuck. Again, that doesn't condone their behavior. We're not saying we agree with that behavior, but we can see that that action of ghosting is coming from a thought that fuels a feeling. Feelings that I have seen fuel ghosting are nervous, hesitant, uncomfortable, awkward, overwhelmed, scared, stuck, or cornered. All of those emotions I have seen create the action or the behavior of just avoiding the situation entirely, no longer talking to them, just like removing that from their life. And like I said, notice that none of these are right or wrong or good or bad. They're all different experiences. And sometimes we're like, it's okay to not ghost. It's okay to ghost in this scenario. Like we think it's okay to ghost a spam call or a sales call, but we don't think it's okay to ghost in other situations like a romantic partnership or someone we've gone on one date with. But that's only your opinion, and that's okay. You can stand by that and recognize that that's what I want to believe is right or wrong or good or bad, and that's okay. But you also have to recognize that not everyone's going to agree with you. Even if most people that you're surrounded by agree with you, that's not everyone. Now, what is the main problem when it comes to ghosting? And the main issue I notice is that the person who gets ghosted oftentimes takes it very personally and makes it a problem about them. They make it mean something about them. Maybe they make it mean I wasn't enough. I wasn't worth the explanation. I wasn't worth a conversation. When in reality, the behavior, like we said before, is literally a direct reflection of how they were feeling, their capacity for confrontation and uncomfortable feelings. Right? It's a direct reflection of what they're feeling and thinking, which is something you don't actually even have any control over. It's a them problem, not a you problem. And don't make them ghosting about you, right? Maybe they don't know how to deal with confrontation. They feel overwhelmed. It doesn't make it okay or right, but we can see that it was their thought that created their feeling, which fueled their action or behavior of ghosting, right? I don't have to agree with it, but I cannot make it mean anything about me. I do have control over what I make that ghosting mean for me, and it doesn't have to mean anything's wrong with me. Secondly, most people who get ghosted deal with a lack of closure. And I have an entire podcast episode that outlines the concrete steps to closure, which I highly recommend, and I'll link it in the show notes. But ultimately, even people who have the conversations and are given a very clear why, like why that person broke up with them, those same people don't actually feel closure because it has nothing to do with the conversation. I literally just coached someone inside of the Get Over Your Ex program, and she was like, I need to know why he broke up with me. And I was like, okay, why haven't you asked him? She was like, oh, well, actually I did ask him, and he said he fell out of love with me. And then she went on to give me all the other reasons as to why he fell out of love with her, why they were breaking up. But she was ignoring them and she didn't like them. So she didn't agree with them. And so she wasn't accepting those. So therefore, she didn't have closure. She wasn't deciding what closure was going to be for her. So even though she got the why, she still didn't feel closure, which I think is so fascinating. You create the closure, and I know how annoying that can be to hear, but I promise you, you have the exact steps to create that for yourself in the episode. And you don't have to be afraid of listening to that episode. I know a lot of times people are scared of creating closure because they think it means it's really over. But hey, listen to the episode and choose not to do the exercises then, but give yourself a shot and at least just listen to it, because closure doesn't mean shutting and locking the door and never being able to reopen it if you wanted to. Okay? But what I want you to see is that the lack of closure isn't coming from the ghosting. Ghosted or not, you can have a lack of closure. You're not some special snowflake of, if I could have had that conversation, if they wouldn't have ghosted me, then this would be easier or better. It doesn't work like that. I have Braveheart saying the complete opposite. If they would have just stopped talking to me, this would have been easier or better. It goes both ways. The grass is always greener. So here's what we need to do when we're ghosted. Are you guys ready? The solution. Here's the solution. 1, the first thing I want you to do is decide what you want in a relationship. Do I want someone who does that? If I don't care about being ghosted and that's not a problem in terms of my relationships, then it's a non-issue. I just highly doubt if you're listening to this, that's where you're at. If it is a problem, right? If this isn't what you want in a relationship, then do you want to talk to them about it? Do you want to reach out over and over and over again? Or do you want to find someone who just simply doesn't ghost you, who has the ability and the capacity for confrontation and open communication? Your energy, your effort, your time and money is valuable. Where do you want to direct that? Get super clear. The second thing is, do not, under any circumstance, make their action or behavior of ghosting about you. Decide what you're going to think and believe about you, regardless of what other people do. Ghosting is a direct reflection of them and what they think and believe, not you. You don't have to subscribe to their ideas, opinions, and points of view. Number 3, if you're really struggling with closure after not making their actions mean anything about you, like if you've taken steps 1 and 2 and then you're still struggling with closure, then I for sure recommend that you go listen to the concrete steps to creating closure episode. Like I said, I'll put them in the show notes or the link in the show notes so it's easy. And what I can say here is that just because you were ghosted, it doesn't mean the lack of closure is coming from that. Like you can have no conversation and still have complete closure. You can have a conversation and have a lack of closure. Having conversations or no conversations doesn't create closure. The lack of closure is coming from you. And I want you to think about, if you were to have a conversation with that person, what would you maybe give yourself permission to believe if you had a conversation with them and did, answer all the questions that you might have? What would you be giving yourself permission to believe then that you're not allowing yourself to believe now? All right, my brave hearts, ghosting is not about you. If someone ghosts you, the worst thing you can do is make it mean something terrible about you, when in reality, it's their thoughts that created a feeling that fueled an action of ghosting. Decide what you want in a relationship and decide what you're going to think and believe about you, regardless of what other people are doing around you. And then decide what you want in that relationship. And I think that that is so important, and getting clear about that, and gift yourself closure if that's something that comes up for you when you're being ghosted. If you're being ghosted. All right, my beautiful brave hearts, I love you so much. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast for more episodes like this. And if you found any of our episodes helpful, we would love, love, love a written review on the Apple Podcast app to help other heartbroken humans turn their pain into power and their heartbreak into happy. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course, where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.